Math 7, Unit 3, Lesson 5, Writing Proportions. Alright, so when writing proportions, you can use a table to write proportions because table lines up the units. Consider the following table. On Monday, I walked 6 miles in 2 hours, and on Tuesday, I walked 12 miles in 2 hours. So I can write a proportion by lining up the columns. Notice that the days line up in the fractions, and the units line up across the numerators and across the denominators. I could also write the table using the rows, or the proportion using the rows. This way the units would line up in the two different fractions, and the days would line up in the numerators or denominator. So, it is important to notice that there are 8 ways the quantities could be organized into a proportion. Technically 16 ways if you switch the equal sign around. But anyway, out of the 8 ways here, 4 of them are good and 4 of them are bad. And the way you can tell that they're good, if they are good, things tend to line up. 6 miles in 2 hours always needs to line up here. Now, over here on 2 of them, they actually do. But the others, they don't. 6 miles, 2 hours, 6 miles, 2 hours. So those are bad. Another thing that needs to line up, 6 miles needs to line up with 12 miles. Now 6 miles lines up with 12, 6 miles lines up with 12, 6 lines up with 12, and 6 lines up with 12. On these others, 6 does not line up with 12, 6 does not line up with 12. Even though 6 and 12 line up in these, you need them to be both lining up, because you need your table to have its things lining up. Okay, let's write a proportion from each table. You do not need to solve the proportion. Right here, I would just go with 2 touchdowns make 12 points, and 5 touchdowns make X points. And I've got a proportion. There are, of course, 3 other correct answers. I'll go ahead and write them quickly in green. I could have 12 points for 2 touchdowns and X points for 5 touchdowns. I could have 2 compared to 5, 2 from the last game and 5 in today's game, 12 in the last game and X in today's game, and that could be upside down and it would also work. So there are 4 different ways that proportion could be written. Okay, Monday, 68 calories and 13 pretzels, and 2 X calories and 47 pretzels. Well, 68 calories were in 13 pretzels, and X calories were in 47 pretzels. There we go. Write a proportion using the given information. You do not need to solve the proportion. Example 348. Michael uses 3 gallons of water, 2 tomato plants. How many gallons of water does he use for 15 tomato plants? Well, it's 3 gallons for 2 tomato plants. I'm going to put gallons on top, tomato plants on bottom, and 3 gallons for 2 tomato plants. We've got X gallons for 15 tomato plants. That is the setup here. Katie can walk 2 city blocks. We've got city blocks and we've got minutes. So we just need to line these up. 2 city blocks in 5 minutes, and how long? 10 city blocks in X minutes. And that's the setup. There are many methods for solving a proportion, which will be discussed in the next video. The first method, though, we'll talk about now, and we'll get the other 2 methods in the next video. Some proportions can be solved mentally. For example, you may notice, based on a firm understanding of fractions, that 1/2 equals X over 6 would require X to have to be 3. Because 1/2 equals 3/6. It's just an understanding of fractions. Now, there are several ways of visualizing the mental math. For example, 1/2 equals X over 6. There are 4 ways. I could look at the fact that to get from 2 to 6, I multiply by 3. So I'd have to multiply by 3 here. I could notice that get from top to bottom, I have to multiply by 2. So I'd have to multiply this by 2. And 3 is the number you multiply by 2 to get 6. I could use division. Going from 2 to 1, I divide by 2. So I have to divide by 2 going 6 to X. I could notice that going from 6 to 2 is divide by 3. So I'd have to go from X to 1, dividing by 3. So there's several ways to look for that pattern. All right. So let's solve using mental math. On this first one, 3/7 equals m over 35. To get from 7 to 35, you multiply by 5. So 3 to m, I'm going to multiply by 5. 3 times 5 is 15. M equals 15. Okay. N over 15 equals 36 over 30. I have to multiply 15 by 2 to get to 30. So n times 2 is 36. I'm going to take 36 divide 2. So n is 18. Next one, to get from 2 to 12, I can multiply by 6. So 3 times 6 is 18. W is 18. 11 thirteenths go to 33 over b. To get from 11 to 33, I multiply by 3. So I'm going to multiply by 3 here. b is 39. R over 8 equals 3/4. To get from 4 to 8, I multiply by 2. So r 3 times 2 is going to be 6. R equals 6. 5/15 equals 7 over b. To get from 5 to 15, I multiply by 3. So I can multiply by 3, getting from 7 to b. b is 21. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to skip these for the video. In the practice, on number 1, you're going to just be writing a proportion. Number 2, you solve the proportion mentally. So you just look for that nifty little fraction pattern you can use and then do the equivalent fraction and you've got the answer. Number 3 is a bit of a challenge problem. See if you can take 1,582.7 minutes and express it as hours, minutes, and seconds. You're going to need to figure out how many hours that is and subtract all those minutes out, and you'll have some minutes left over that aren't fitting into the whole number of hours, and then do the same thing as you move down to seconds. Number 4, you're going to do a unit rate problem. It's 55 feet in 80 seconds. How far in 4 minutes? Now, since you're doing things in seconds, you probably should think of 4 minutes in seconds, which is 240 seconds. Number 5, determine if they're proportions. This is what we did on previous assignments. It's a yes or no. Number 6, you're going to solve an equation. 7, we've got a situation. Pick the correct proportion and explain why it's the correct proportion. And number 8, you're trying to figure out the total number of lockers in a school, and you're given the ratio of blue to white. Keep in mind that the total lockers in the school will include all blue lockers and all white lockers.